the deadly silence of Miyamoto Musashi. In any confrontation, the most dangerous person in the room isn't the guy with bulging muscles. And it isn't the guy screaming the loudest just to intimidate everyone else. It is the person who stays completely silent. Sounds counterintuitive, right? But this exact cold reality forged an undefeated survival legend in history, and it is about to completely transform how you handle every single conflict in modern life. Let us talk about Miyamoto Musashi, Japan's legendary sword saint of the 17th century. Over 60 life-or-death duels, undefeated in all of them. Standing across from the most vicious opponents imaginable, where a single hair's width mistake meant your head rolling on the ground right then and there. But the secret that kept Musashi alive through decades of brutal slaughter wasn't lightning fast, sword speed, nor was it raw power that could crush steel armor. It was a far more ruthless weapon, absolute mastery over his own mind. While his opponents lost their minds in fury, hearts pounding out of their chests, tearing themselves apart with fear, Musashi maintained a deadly silence. Men panicked and suffered psychological breakdowns before the first strike was even thrown. Now be honest with yourself for a moment. When someone points a finger in your face and screams, or jabs at you with toxic words, what instantly happens inside your body? Your chest tightens, your heart hammers like it wants to break through your ribs. Blood rushes to your face, muscles lock up, and anger flares up like a raging storm. In just a few seconds, you get swept away by the emotional hurricane. You yell back, you bark, or you choke on your own rage, unable to speak. Congratulations. You just walked straight into your own biological trap. Musashi understood this trap better than anyone. He knew that the moment you let emotion consume you, you officially hand over two of the most critical things to your opponent: control over the situation and control over yourself. But how can a flesh and blood human being, facing a bare blade or brutal insults, keep a cold, unshakable mind? The answer lies in a legendary historical duel to the death. April 13, 1612, Ganryu Island, a small, isolated island in the middle of the sea. The stage for the most iconic samurai duel in history. In one corner was Sasaki Kojiro, a renowned prodigy of swordsmanship famous for his swallow cut technique. Kojiro wielded a famously long blade called the Monoshoshizao. He was arrogant, proud, and had never tasted defeat. In the other corner was Miyamoto Musashi. The sun was high in the sky. Suffocating heat hung in the air. The gathering crowd began to whisper. Kojiro stood on the sand, hand gripping his hilt, eyes burning with anger. 1 hour passed. Then 2 hours. Musashi was nowhere to be found. Waiting in vain is the fastest acid to eat away at a man's mind. Kojiro's ego and pride began to burn. He thought Musashi had fled out of fear, or was deliberately insulting the honor of a master like him. Patience evaporated, giving way to raging fury. And then a small wooden boat slowly drifted ashore. Musashi stepped out, no grand armor, hair messy, unkempt clothing. In his hand was not a gleaming masterwork blade, but a crude wooden sword, carved hastily from a spare oar on the boat ride over. That wooden sword happened to be just a few centimeters longer than Kojiro's long blade. Kojiro charged forward in a fury. He drew his sword and angrily threw his scabbard into the water. Musashi looked straight into his opponent's eyes, his gaze as cold as a still lake. He spoke a single line, light as a breeze, yet piercing straight to the heart. "You throw away your scabbard, Kojiro. You have already lost." For only a man with no intention of returning alive abandons his scabbard. Kojiro lunged like a wounded beast, swinging a final blow, blinded by rage. Musashi needed only a fraction of a second to step aside. The wooden sword carved from an oar came crashing down. The duel was over in a single exchange. Musashi didn't win that fight with the sharpest steel blade. He won because he destroyed Kojiro's mind 2 hours before the duel even began. He shattered his opponent's composure, triggered the emotional trap, and turned a legendary prodigy into an out-of-control novice. That is the peak of real-world combat. crushing your opponent psychologically before the first blow is ever struck. Many people mistakenly think Musashi was an emotionless killing machine. Huge mistake. As a human being of flesh and blood standing on the edge of life and death, he felt fear and he felt anger. But here was the deadly difference. He never let himself become the anger. That is the first psychological weapon, emotional distance. Musashi described a confrontation like standing high above, looking down at a dark storm cloud moving across the sky. The cloud may be dark and carry lightning, but the sky itself remains intact, never morphing into the cloud. Most of us get stuck in daily life because of self-sabotaging language. When a boss yells at you or someone insults you online, you say, "I am so angry," or worse, "This anger is who I am right now." You let it consume your entire mind, turning you into a puppet pulled by your own emotions. Musashi used a completely different framework. He acknowledged the presence of anger, but stood apart from it. In his mind, only one recognition rang out: I am observing anger arising within me. With just that tiny linguistic space, you create a safe zone between the stimulus and your reaction. And right in that space, the power of choice truly emerges. When someone tries to provoke you, pause for 1 second. Tell yourself, I notice frustration is popping up. By simply labeling the emotion, the suffocating fire inside you automatically cools down. Holding emotional distance alone isn't enough to master the game. You need Musashi's second weapon, anticipatory awareness. Why do you panic when caught in an argument? Because you are surprised. Surprise triggers a red alert mechanism in your brain, dumping a massive wave of stress hormones that instantly shuts down your logical thinking. Musashi never stepped into a fight without thoroughly studying his opponent. Before carving that wooden sword on the boat to Ganryu Island, he had already read Kojiro like a book, arrogant, impatient, and easily triggered by disrespect. Musashi didn't read minds, he read behavioral patterns. No matter how complex human beings seem, under pressure they act according to predictable, instinctive scripts. Anger always follows a set path, fear narrows vision. Impatience always exposes a weakness. Before stepping into any tense conversation, whether negotiating a deal, confronting an overbearing boss, or resolving family conflict, spend 30 seconds asking yourself 3 questions. What is this person's true emotional state right now? What do they actually want behind these harsh words? What are the 3 worst-case reaction scenarios they might throw at me? Once you have mapped out your opponent's reactions in your head, the element of surprise is completely destroyed. You are no longer defensive. You calmly watch them play out the exact script you foresaw from home. Now you know how to detach from emotion and read the opponent's script. But what happens when the fire of anger still blazes biologically inside you? That is when you need Musashi's third weapon, strategic breathing. Musashi observed a deadly rule on the battlefield. Before a fighter throws a foolish strike or falls into panic, the first thing that changes isn't his sword hand, it is his breathing rhythm. The loser's breath is always short, rapid, and shallow. In modern science, rapid breathing is the direct switch releasing cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream, slamming your body into fight or flight mode. At that moment, the logical brain becomes paralyzed. Musashi controlled every single breath in mortal combat. He trained himself to strike while keeping a deep, steady rhythm from his diaphragm. Because he knew, whoever controls the breath controls the fate of their own emotions. Whenever you feel blood rushing to your face during a heated argument, activate Musashi's 4-6 breathing technique. Inhale gently through your nose for 4 seconds. Hold for 1 second. Exhale slowly through your mouth for 6 seconds. Just 1 or 2 cycles of this sends a direct biological signal to your brain, I am safe. There is no life or death threat here. The parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. Your heart rate drops and sharp logical thinking instantly returns. Once you master your breath, you are ready for the ultimate weapon, the one thing that separates a mediocre Fight-hungry amateur from a true master, purposeful action. Why do most arguments in everyday life turn into disasters that destroy relationships? Because they start over something small, but within minutes, both sides forget the original point. Everything turns into a battle of egos. People argue not to solve the problem, but to win, to silence their own insecurities, or to hurt the other person out of spite. Musashi never swung his sword for his ego. He didn't fight to show off strength. He swung his blade with a single purpose: survival and winning the match. In his classic work, The Book of Five Rings Go Rin no Sho, he wrote, "A warrior must not intend to attack merely to satisfy anger, but must keep his mind fixed firmly on the larger goal." Next time, before you open your mouth to fire back at a provocation, freeze for a beat and ask yourself one single question: what is my actual goal in this conversation? Answer it in one short sentence and use it as your psychological anchor. My goal is to resolve this disagreement without destroying the working relationship. My goal is to protect my personal boundaries, not to spread hate. My goal is to preserve my peace, not to lecture anyone. When you anchor this goal in your mind, every insult or manipulation tactic from the other side falls into empty air. You stop taking their bait. You fight for your goal, not for their rage. Look back at Musashi's 4 psychological weapons: emotional distance, anticipatory awareness, strategic breathing, and purposeful action. These are not just survival tactics on the sandy shores of Ganryu Island in the 17th century. This is the ultimate toolkit defining modern mental toughness in an increasingly chaotic world. Every day you are surrounded by silent battles: a toxic boss blowing up at you in a meeting, ongoing family friction weighing on your chest, or simply an anonymous internet troll trying to bait you into a trap. All of these situations work precisely like Sasaki Kojiro. They try to create chaos, provoke your ego, force you to roar and jump to react, only to destroy your own position. But when you master Musashi's 4 principles, a miracle happens. Many conflicts simply disappear. They disappear not because the world got softer, but because you stopped supplying fuel to the fire. You realize most arguments only exist when you allow your emotions to take the bait. Real power in this day and age doesn't come from how loud you shout, or how ruthlessly you dismantle someone's argument. Real power comes from complete mastery over your silence when everyone else around you is losing their minds. You control when to enter a fight, and more importantly, you know exactly when to smile and walk away, because that fight isn't worth a single drop of your energy. The ultimate victory in swordsmanship is not striking down an opponent under your blade. The ultimate victory is stepping through conflict without letting it stain the peace of your mind. Musashi found that freedom after more than 60 life or death duels. Today, that choice belongs entirely to you. Next time someone tries to provoke or anger you, will you choose to roar like Kojiro and fall into the trap? Or will you hold Musashi's absolute silence and master the game? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this video brought you value, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next journey in building mental strength. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.